In applying these postulates to a delineation of character before we pass to an examination of the brain itself, we must notice three great modifying conditions. Without taking these modifying conditions into account, a correct estimate of brain power is impossible. And it is because these modifying conditions have been ignored by many professed teachers of phrenology and but poorly expressed by others who did recognize them, that many eminent physiologists have condemned phrenology hastily as having no sound basis in physiology. The exponents of phrenology are themselves to blame for this. They have been too content to rest under the imputation of feeling heads for bumps. They have not been sufficiently versed, in many instances, in physiological science to dare to debate the ground with high authorities. I challenge the world to bring one single natural fact to militate against the principles here announced. I will debate the question with any skilled medical, legal, or clerical authority, and I claim, without fear of contradiction, that the world does not hold a head whose character will differ from that which phrenology ascribes to it, when the developments of the brain are measured in the light of these modifying conditions. When I was lecturing in Indiana in 1885, Governor Will Comeback of that state propounded this question: "Professor, what would you do if you found a man whose head, in the light of phrenological principles, showed a certain character, and you found on intimate acquaintance and positive proof that he, in fact, possessed a character radically different?" "My dear Governor," I replied, "I would wait until the sun rose in the west, and then watch to see what you would do and follow suit. Such men do not exist, they never have existed, and they never will exist until the order of nature is reversed." These three great modifying conditions, which must be taken into consideration before we estimate the brain itself, are as follows. First, the state of the health. Second, the quality of the organization. Third, the temperament of the constitution. And we will consider them in the order named, therefore first, the state of the health. It is a great fact in the constitution of man that whatever affects the body affects the manifestations of intelligence, and conversely, whatever affects intelligence affects the body. The body is the harp of 1,000 strings, manifesting its intelligence by different degrees of vibration. If either the musician or his instrument is out of order, the music will be discordant. It is not necessary for me to argue that a man must be in perfect health to exhibit perfect mentality. But as perfect health is the exception, and not the rule, we rarely find mentality even approximating perfection. We are obliged, in our estimate of the character of men, to allow for various bodily infirmities, in a word, for the eccentricities of disease. These diseases may be inherited or acquired since birth. They may be acute or chronic in their stages. They may be mild or malignant in type. They may produce long, continued illness, terminating in death, or they may be only what we call a temporary indisposition, like that of the country boy who went to Boston for the first time to see the sights. As he wandered around, he became hungry, and entering a restaurant began to experiment with strange dishes. He ate first a porterhouse steak, then some fried oysters, then a lobster salad, a lot of pickles, ice cream, cake, and bologna sausage, drank a bottle of champagne, and retired to his lodgings, and dreamed that he was lying on Boston Common, and that the devil was sitting on his stomach, holding Bunker Hill Monument in his lap. If you eat an indigestible meal, you are unable to perform good brain work after it. If you feed the body on material that will not nourish it, the brain refuses to work. If you are in the clutches of disease, we cannot expect of you a high measure of brain power. In other words, the manifestations of the mind are weakened by the disorder of its instrument, the body. The phrenologist, therefore, who essays to read your character, must be able to trace the signs of disease in your appearance. He must needs be an expert physiologist and anatomist. He must understand pathology. He must have the diagnosing skill to detect disease and allow for it in his estimate of your mentality, or his delineation is worth less than nothing. Nay, more, he may do you a positive damage by advising you to adopt a course of life which would be disastrous to your constitution. He must be able to do all this and do it rapidly and with precision. Never trust yourself under the hands of a professed phrenologist unless you are confident of his skill in estimating and diagnosing your physical condition. Quality. The second step in a phrenological examination is the determination of the quality of the organization. Perhaps there is no branch of the science of phrenology which has received such crude treatment at the hands of phrenological writers as this subject of organic quality. Many use the term interchangeably with temperament. Some confound it with temperament and hereditary disposition. Others recognize it as a distinct modifying condition, but I know of no writer except myself who has yet attempted a classification of the subject, or who has dared to recognize its importance as a modifying condition of character. Our quality is the texture of organization, and in this respect must be regarded entirely independently of temperament. The latter is conceded to depend upon the preponderance or relative energy of some part of the system, anatomically or pathologically. But each of the conditions denominated as temperaments may exist, with widely different manifestations of the peculiar conditions we describe as quality, with a corresponding modification of the character of the subject in each case. Hence the necessity of a rational classification based upon the independent observation of these modifications of quality as a distinct subject, in order to apply it as a distinct step in a phrenological examination. The trees of the forest present distinct variations of quality, depending on the texture of the wood. The hickory is hard, the ash is brittle, the pine is soft, etc. As an examination of the texture of the human organization will disclose variations.
Different, it is true, but sometimes strikingly analogous, and no less important in determining the fitness of the individual for particular purposes. We determine quality by a critical inspection of the general contour of the body, its relative size, the adaptation of its parts to each other, the color and grain of the skin, the relative harmony of the features, the relative brightness of the eyes, the color and texture of the hair, the movements of the body, the tone of the voice, and the rapidity of mental process. To determine quality accurately may sometimes require a series of experiments on the individual, and the success of the examiner will of course depend on his own acuteness of perception and judgment.
Quality is 1. Strong, 2. Delicate, 3. Responsive, and conversely 1. Weak, 2. Coarse, 3. Sluggish, and in proportion as these elements unite to form an efficient and powerful organization, we may speak of the quality as high, or as we find them wanting, we may call the quality low. Strong quality is exhibited by an organization harmoniously constructed, full size, compact, and firm. The limbs, trunk, and head are generally well formed. the muscles firm, the walk steady, the carriage erect, and the movements generally graceful, but all indicating power. The features of the face are strongly marked and prominent, the lines well marked, and the entire structure is definite and established. A hair from the head of such an individual will be harder to break than another from an organization of different quality. It will also be harder to pull from the scalp. The grasp of the hand is steady and firm, indicating muscular power. The eyesight is good and the eye steady and clear, well-formed and powerful in range of vision. If the perceptives are large, it will be penetrating. The skin is firm to the touch, though the grain may be either fine or coarse. The entire organization is built upon the principle of strength, but the direction in which this strength will be applied will depend upon the temperamental conditions. With the mental temperament well developed, a strong mind will be manifested. With the vital and motive temperaments, strong physical and muscular functions. The relative absence of this quality will be marked by corresponding weakness, and although we may have a pronounced mental temperament, the individual will exhibit but little mental strength, and with a pronounced motive temperament, he will be incapable of strong muscular action. Delicate quality is denoted by delicacy and refinement of structure. It may or may not be coexistent with strength. The strands of silk thread are fine and delicate, but also very strong. Other substances are refined and delicate, but possess little of the element of strength. Delicate quality in the human organization is accompanied by corresponding manifestations. The texture of the skin is close-grained, delicate, and soft. The hair is fine, the eye is clear and bright, the features smooth and very harmonious. The mental processes are brilliant, facile, rapid. Their depth and power, however, depending upon the combination of the element of strength with delicacy. Persons possessing delicate quality are very acute. Such persons are able to appreciate nice shades of thought and to cultivate the graces in an eminent degree. They are adapted to pursuits requiring delicacy of the senses and acute perception, such as music, painting, manufacturing of delicate articles, etc. In literature, they display refined taste, and the head is symmetrical and generally well developed. Those who are low in delicacy lack refinement and grace, and should carefully cultivate these qualities. The relative absence of this element entirely or proportionately unfits the individual for these mental processes, requiring delicacy and acuteness. He may possess a well-balanced organization as to temperament and cerebral development, but without the element of delicate quality, he will be utterly incapable of those mental processes requiring delicate shades of thought. The individual who unites the elements of strong and delicate quality will exhibit both power and fineness. He will be able to display more versatility of talent than the individual possessing the element of strength or delicacy alone. Those persons who have displayed great intelligence coupled with brilliancy have uniformly united both of these elements. The element of responsiveness depends upon a certain sensitiveness of texture, resembling the resonance of a well-tuned musical instrument, and a certain harmonious adjustment of parts, which renders the individual capable of receiving a mental impression promptly and responding to its action. Persons possessing this quality have such delicate sympathy of the entire organization that the mental processes are exceedingly rapid and the physical manifestations are equally prompt. The movements of the body are quick, the brain is active, the eye bright, intelligent, and keen-sighted, the expression of the face vivacious, the voice musical, the speech rapid, and the individual often anticipates the thought of those with whom he converses. If you hesitate on a word, he will instantly supply it. Such persons are keenly sensitive to surrounding circumstances, easily impressed, and the entire organization seems to vibrate in unison with the impressions made upon it. It is not uncommon to find this condition mistaken by observers for the nervous temperament of the pathological classification. The true distinction lies in the fact that the latter is a diseased condition, resulting in a supersensitiveness of the nervous system, while responsive quality exists in perfect health and is a perfectly normal condition of a character frequently resulting in great advantage to the individual and absolutely essential in many vocations. It is indispensable to the musician, the artist, the poet, etc., and I depend upon it in estimating the capacity of my subjects for various professions and trades, especially those involving the fine arts, literature, and many of the departments of merchandising. The absence of this responsive element is marked by a general sluggishness of all the mental and physical processes. The movements of the body are slow, and the brain, while it may be capable of strong thought, is correspondingly slow in action. The individual does not yield readily to the strongest impressions, and his conversation will be slow, frequently tedious. Such individuals are incapable of doing anything in a hurry, and when urged by others, frequently become confused. Left to their own methods, with plenty of time, they are frequently capable of displaying great strength and delicacy of quality, both in physical and mental manifestations. The intelligent reader will readily comprehend that the best organization is that in which the elements of strength, delicacy, and responsiveness are harmoniously blended. The relative predominance of each element will in all cases decide the particular class of purposes, vocations, professions, or other pursuits to which the subject is best adapted, other things being equal. Quality results from a variety of causes. Like all other personal peculiarities, it is, to a certain extent, hereditary. Children are, to a greater or less extent, certain to inherit the quality of their parents and immediate ancestors. But the inherited quality of offspring is subject to great modifications. It is definitely established that the temporary condition of mind and body of the parents at the moment of conception materially affects the permanent quality of the offspring. Thus, it is possible for parents to transmit to children a much better or much worse permanent condition of quality than they themselves possess. Observation also justifies the belief that children born of loving and affectionate parents surpass in quality those born of incompatible natures. The occupation and surroundings of the parents at the time of conception, and particularly the influences brought to bear upon the mother while the offspring is in utero, produce a lasting effect upon the quality of the latter. Science has long since demonstrated the fact that every part of the human organization is susceptible to educational development. Quality, like every other modifying condition, is susceptible to development in either direction, and the success attending an effort to develop either strength, delicacy, or responsiveness of quality in any given individual will in all cases be commensurate with the intelligence and vigor of the efforts expended to that end. The study of quality being thus understood, I introduce you now to the most beautiful study in the curriculum of human science, the third step in the phrenological estimate of character, viz. Tao. Temperament. By the term temperament is meant the preponderance in development of some element or system of organs in the body to such an extent as to give to the character a distinctive, recognizable type, a temper or disposition resulting from the predominance of some one element in the character which modifies and gives tone to all the rest, resulting from its superior development. As a matter of fact, there are as many different temperaments as there are individuals, no two individuals having the same constitution. But science classifies them under distinctive heads, as their developments are approximately the same, or as their developments are in the same general direction, regardless of exact degrees. Electromagnetic temperaments. The electric temperament exists when electricity dominates over magnetism in the organization. Its characteristics are gravity, receptivity, darkness, and coldness. This temperament was formerly called the bilious or brunette temperament. It is distinguished by dark, hard, dry skin, dark, strong hair, dark eyes, olive complexion, and usually by a long, athletic form of body. It is remarkable for concentrativeness of design and affections, strong gravity, drawing power, and cohesiveness, strong will, resolution, dignity, serious disposition and expression, moderate circulation, and coolness of temperature. It is produced by a dry, hot climate, common in southern latitudes and almost universal in tropical natives. Persons of this temperament are better adapted to hot climates because electricity dominates over magnetism, and they do not antagonize the climate by the radiation of magnetism, but rather thrive on the magnetism which they absorb. This temperament is closely analogous to the condition of tropical animals and birds. The magnetic temperament exists when magnetism dominates over electricity in the organization. Its characteristics are vibration, radiation, heat, and light. This temperament was formerly called the sanguine or blonde temperament. It is distinguished by a light-colored, warm, moist skin, light-colored or red hair, fresh, ruddy or florid complexion, light-colored or blue eyes, rounded form of body, often plump or corpulent, large chest, square shoulders, indicating a very active heart and vital organs. It is remarkable for versatility of character, jovial disposition, fond of good living and great variety, changeableness, activity, and vivaciousness. The temperature of the body is warm and the circulation very strong. This temperament vibrates between great extremes of disposition, develops great force of radiation and driving power, and is universally characterized by warmth, enthusiasm, and high color. It is produced by the climates of northern and temperate latitudes and is almost universal in the natives of extreme northern countries. Persons of this temperament are better adapted to cold climates because magnetism dominates over electricity. Consequently, they produce more animal heat and are better able to endure the rigors of a cold climate. The same general conditions are found to exist in birds and animals inhabiting northern latitudes. Anatomical temperaments. The temperaments are also classed anatomically as motive, where the bones are large and strong, and the muscular development is stronger than the nutritive or mental system. Persons of this temperament are active, energetic, and best adapted to outdoor pursuits and vigorous employment. Vital, in which the nutritive or vital system is most active, large lungs, stomach, and blood vessels, and corpulent and plump figure. Persons possessing temperament are inclined to sedentary occupations, and if the brain is large and of good quality, are able to do an immense amount of mental labor without breaking down. They should take systematic exercise and avoid fats and stimulating foods and drinks to obtain the best results. Mental, in which the brain and nerves are most active. The body is not adapted to hard muscular labor and there is not enough vitality of nutritive power to nourish the brain in the heavy demands made upon it. Such persons incline to mental effort and literary work, and for a time display great brilliancy, but sooner or later collapse, unless this condition is corrected by regular hours, plenty of sleep, the absence of stimulants, and the cultivation of muscular and vital force. This temperament is distinguished by a relatively large head and small body, piriform face, high, wide forehead, and usually sharp features. Chemical temperaments. There are 3 principal fluids which circulate through the body, viz., arterial blood, venous blood, and lymph. As the blood passes out from the heart through the arteries, it is strongly charged with magnetism and is very strongly acid in quality. As it returns to the heart through the veins, it has expended its magnetism and its acidity has been very much neutralized. The lymph is an alkali fluid, and it circulates through the lymphatic vessels as a reserve force of vital food. The predominance of either of these fluids in the constitution greatly modifies the character and gives rise to the classification of the chemical temperaments. As every cell in the body comes in contact with an acid and an alkali fluid, we may, by estimating the relative quantities of each fluid, arrive at a very accurate judgment of the chemical condition of the body, and these elements are also valuable in estimating the amount of magnetism that will be produced by the organization through chemical action, as every cell by its contact with these fluids is constituted a magnetic battery. The acid temperament exists where arterial blood predominates. It is distinguished by convexity of features and sharpness of angles. The face is usually round in general outline and convex in profile, the forehead prominent at the eyebrows and retreating as it rises, the nose Roman, the mouth prominent, the teeth convex in form and arrangement and sharp, the chin round and sometimes retreating. The body is angular and generally convex in outline, with sharpness at all angles. This temperament is usually accompanied with great activity of mind and vivaciousness of disposition, and sometimes develops great energy and asperity. It is very likely to exhaust itself prematurely. The alkali temperament exists where lymph is in excess over arterial blood. It is distinguished by concavity of features and obliquity of angles, or rather the absence of angles. The face is usually broad in general outline and concave in profile, the forehead prominent and wide at the upper part, and medium in development at the eyebrows, the nose concave, the mouth retreating, the teeth flat in form and arrangement, the chin concave and prominent at the point. The body is round and inclined to corpulency, without angles. This temperament is usually well stocked with vitality, but unless actively employed is likely to become dull and overloaded with adipose tissue and lymph. From the foregoing observations, it is evident that the temperaments combine in each individual according to whichever temperament is found to predominate in these 3 divisions. Thus, one man will have an electric motive acid temperament, another a magnetic mental acid temperament, another a magnetic vital alkali, and so on through all the combinations which can be made from the 7 elementary temperaments. This blending, when finally estimated, constitutes the temperament of the individual. The ideal condition would, of course, be a perfect equilibrium of the elements of each division, in which case the individual would be said to have a perfectly balanced temperament. Electricity is the genitive passion of space. It is manifested by the states of gravity, receptivity, coldness, and darkness. Magnetism is the genitive passion of matter. It is manifested by the states of vibration, radiation, heat, and light. The eternal affinities which exist between these conditions produce all the phenomena of growth. Growth is the change which takes place in a structure in obedience to the law of conformity to the changes which take place in its environment. Man is the most complex organism known to this planet. He stands at the end of a long line of development extending from the simplest form of mineral through the vegetable and animal kingdoms to his own position in the cosmos, and embracing, and including in his own structure a representation of every form below him. But when this exceedingly complex structure is analyzed, it is found to consist wholly of combinations of the simpler forms which existed before him. In the light of a rational philosophy, therefore, we are forced to consider man as a creature of growth, and subject to exactly the same natural laws as the objects which surround him. Any attempt to regard him as an exception results in the calamities which must always attend presumption and ignorance. The well-balanced temperament, the temperamentum temperatum of the ancients, is an ideal condition in which there is in fact no temperament, all the organs of the body being perfectly in harmony and exhibiting no preponderance of one over the other. Many persons approximate this condition, but it is difficult to find one in which it is so nearly attained as to make the proper classification of his temperament under the above heads a difficult matter. However desirable such a condition may be from a purely physiological standpoint, the fact remains that all great and powerful natures, the men who have been the leaders in the battles of literature, art, science, and war itself, have had well-defined and pronounced temperamental conditions of organization. We have now fully demonstrated that in his scientific delineation of character, the professional phrenologist depends upon something more than mere configuration of skull. The great modifying conditions of health, quality, and temperament in every case give us the foundation of the character. It will be seen, some medical authorities to the contrary notwithstanding, that the science of phrenology has a firm basis on the established principles and known facts of physiology and anatomy. Bearing these facts in mind, we will now proceed to the discussion of the scientific principles governing the phrenological examination of size and configuration of brain, or the theory of the localization in different organs of the brain of the corresponding faculties of the mind. The brain is the keyboard of the body. It is an error to claim that it is the exclusive organ of intelligence. The brain performs substantially the same function for the body which the keyboard does for the piano, or which the central office of the telephone system performs for its various subscribers. Magnetism received from the exterior of the body is transmitted to the brain where it produces a result. This result in turn is transmitted to various portions of the body. Properly, therefore, intelligence is distributed over the entire body, and the amount of intelligence which any individual possesses will be found to be in exact proportion to the size and quality of his body and the perfect adaptation, cooperation, and adjustment of its parts. The brain is an oval mass of soft tissue which completely fills the internal cavity of the skull. It is composed of two substances, a white fibrous substance which forms the internal portion, and a gray cortical tissue which forms the external layer. This gray substance lies in folds or convolutions, the furrows or sulci, dipping deeply into the interior of the brain. Illustration: brain with skull removed. It is found by dissection that the brain of an intellectual man exhibits a larger number of convolutions than one of small intellectual caliber, and that the convolutions are deeper and the layer of gray substance thicker, and in consequence of the increase in number and depth of convolutions, there is a wider expanse of surface as well for the distribution of gray matter. Hence, the relative proportion of gray matter in different brains has come to be regarded by physiologists as a test of mental power. Many idiots have large and well-formed brains, but the convolutions are shallow and few, and the gray matter small in quantity and extent of surface. Physicians often ask me how I can estimate the relative quantity of gray matter in a living head without cutting into it. I refer them to the study of quality and temperament, which I have clearly expounded in this lecture. Do you ever find hickory leaves growing on a pine tree? Show me the bark of a tree and I'll tell you the quality of the wood within. Show me the skin, the hair, the eyes of a man, and I'll tell you the quality of every organ in his body, as well as the quality of the brain. I recently astonished the superintendent of an insane asylum, by pointing out to him that the quality of the hair, the eyes, and the skin of idiots was essentially different from the quality of those of more highly endowed persons, and could be told in the dark by a person of educated sensibilities. The quality and texture of the brain being determined, the next step is the consideration of its size. Other things being equal in all natural objects, size is the measure of power. By the term other things in relation to the brain, we mean temperament, quality, and health. This simple principle explains why a great many people who carry large heads are endowed with but little intellectual power. Their heads are filled with sawdust, in other words, a brain of poor quality, supported by a feeble body, or vitiated by excessive temperamental conditions. Men who carry small and misshapen heads are often brilliant in certain directions, and this limited brilliancy in special lines causes them to be spoken of by superficial observers as men of great ability and apparent exceptions to the phrenological rule. The fact remains, however, that in no case is comprehensive greatness ever exhibited in a head of small dimensions. Illustration: small head, brilliant in observation, deficient in reflection. Large size of brain, accompanied with robust health, high quality and good temperamental conditions, gives the highest phase of powerful mentality and comprehensive greatness. Small size of brain, with poor health, low quality and erratic temperamental conditions gives the lowest form of mentality and constitutional inferiority. Between these two extremes, we may find every conceivable modification and form of human character, according to the various combinations of normal and abnormal conditions. Size of brain, then, is a measure of power when judged by an enlightened understanding of physiological, anatomical, and pathological conditions. The phrenologist goes one step farther and asserts that size of brain in any particular region, judged by the same standards of comparison, is an indication of local power. Illustration: criminal. Illustration: philosopher. Every portion of the body is created for a specific function. You never see with your ears, you do not taste with your eyes, you do not walk with your teeth. There is no waste in nature. Every part has its special duty to perform. The part of the brain which lies in front of the ears has a different function from that which lies behind them. The parietal lobes of the brain are not placed in the skull for the same purposes which the frontal and occipital lobes represent. Every fiber has its function, every convolution its purpose. All that remains for us to do is to compare known forms of heads and note the coincidence of character exhibited by similar developments and the divergences of character accompanying diverse developments. In the past century, these observations have been sufficiently successful to locate the general functions of the external portions of the brain, which are situated so that observation and comparison are possible. 42 general organs are now located with definite certainty, and these have been subdivided with sufficient accuracy so that there are over 100 localized centers of cerebral development which can be accurately measured, and their mental power determined to the advantage of the individual and the benefit of society at large. The brain is double. It is divided into two hemispheres by the falx cerebri, a partition which follows the middle line of the skull. Each hemisphere contains one organ pertaining to each faculty of the mind. The size of each organ is estimated not by feeling for bumps or depressions, but by measuring the length of the fibers of the brain from their common center in the medulla oblongata at the head of the spinal column and at a point equidistant from the ears in the interior of the head. From this common center, the fibers of the brain range horizontally and upward in all directions, like the branches of a tree. Development of brain fiber laterally gives a wide head, longitudinally, from the medulla oblongata to the forehead and to the occiput, a long head. Development upward raises the crown, and I have in my collection skulls which show by actual measurement a relative difference of over 3 inches in development of brain fiber to certain localities of brain surface. Viewed in the light of these facts and principles as here expounded, the phrenological position is established, and the childish objections of those who sneer at this beautiful science fall crumbling to the dust. The last great fact to be considered is this: exercise of any portion of the body develops it, enlarges it, and adds to its strength. Disuse weakens, paralyzes, and ultimately destroys. This rule applies to all parts of the body, and to the brain, more particularly because the nervous tissue of which the brain is composed is more rapidly used up and renewed than any other portion of the body, and hence more susceptible to change. Phrenology solves all problems of education and enables every individual to develop a symmetrical and well-formed brain, and with it a harmonious character, by pointing out those portions that are deficient and those that are strong, and thus enabling him to secure a really well-trained mind. By memorizing the different organs and their functions, particularly those in which you are marked as excessive or deficient, and by practicing the observation of your daily conduct and learning to analyze it phrenologically, i.e., to note those occasions when deficient faculties have failed to act, and when predominating faculties have caused you to act hastily or contrary to good judgment, you will soon become painfully aware of your true faults, and by a conscientious action of reason and exercise of self-control will be able to correct them. In the same manner, predominating talents may be tested and proved, and you will rejoice in the birth of new aspirations, hopes, and impulses. In a word, you may be, by means of this science, placed in full command of your mental powers and learn to control and direct them as the skillful engineer controls and directs his locomotive. Concede the fact that these differences in form, quality, temperament, and health mean anything, and all that we claim for phrenology follows logically and as a matter of course. In the light of this demonstration of known facts, it follows that character can be read, and if read, then it can be assigned to the position of its best usefulness in the profession, trade, or avocation suitable to the employment of the talents demonstrated to exist. If phrenology gives the index to your character, as we have proved it does, then it also forms the key to the solution of the problem of matrimony by describing the character which will harmonize with yours in congenial companionship, financial success, and the improvement of offspring. It likewise is a trusty guide in the formation of business relations as partners, employers, or employees, and directs us in the choice of associates, teachers, or companions in social life. It gives to the anxious parent the knowledge of inherited and acquired talents in cherished darlings of the household and in every relation of life. At every moment of existence, it is an advantage, a comfort, an assistance, a thing of beauty, and a joy forever. In this lecture, ladies and gentlemen, I have demonstrated the theory of phrenology. Tomorrow night, and on each of the succeeding nights of this course, I shall give you practical applications. Tomorrow night, I shall lecture on the choice of professions and trades, illustrating to you the qualities that ensure success in law, medicine, the ministry, journalism and teaching and manufacturing, and the various mechanical trades, as well as the qualifications for commercial life in its various departments, wholesale and retail. I shall follow with my celebrated lecture on matrimony, in which I shall expound the principles upon which a correct marriage may be consummated, securing amiable association, perfect offspring, and financial success, after which I shall separate the sexes and continue the subject of matrimony in its physiological relations, under the head of sexual and creative science.